Imagine a world where giants once walked among us, beings of unimaginable strength, towering over ordinary humans, their knowledge and power shaping civilizations long before recorded history. These are the Nephilim, creatures whispered about in ancient texts, shrouded in mystery and fear. Now imagine if they never truly vanished. What if, instead, they retreated into the shadows, waiting, watching, and quietly influencing the course of humanity? Could their legacy still be hidden in our DNA, in the myths and legends that persist across cultures, or even in secret societies and forbidden knowledge long kept from the public eye? This documentary takes you on a journey beyond the boundaries of conventional history and into the realm of the extraordinary. From the cryptic writings of Gnostic and Kabbalistic texts to the strange encounters of modern explorers in remote mountains, forests, and oceans, we explore the possibility that the Nephilim may have survived in secret, hidden from civilization, yet never truly gone. We dive into genetic anomalies in modern humans, ancient technologies, UFO phenomena, and the awakening of old powers that could hint at a world where the giant's influence endures. Could the sudden leaps in technology, AI, and genetic engineering be echoes of knowledge the Nephilim once wielded? Are we unknowingly retracing the steps of the ancient world, stepping closer to a hidden truth that humanity is only beginning to understand? As you drift into sleep, this documentary will guide you through the shadows of history and myth, unraveling mysteries that have been buried for millennia. With every story, every legend, and every unexplained phenomenon, we ask, what if the era of the Nephilim never truly ended? Prepare to explore the hidden corners of our past, the secret threads woven into human evolution, and the tantalizing possibility that giants are not a relic of legend, but a presence quietly shaping our world. Tonight, let your mind wander into the unknown, into the realms where history, myth, and mystery collide, and ask yourself, could the giants still be among us, waiting for the right moment to emerge once more?
Long before humanity learned to carve its first symbols into wet clay or mark time through the movement of stars, there were whispers, echoes carried by winds that remembered things humans had not yet learned to fear. These echoes belonged to beings who walked the earth in ages when memory had not yet taken form, in eras erased not by forgetting, but by something far more deliberate. For in the quiet spaces between myth and history, between scripture and shadow, there exists a possibility so unsettling that entire civilizations chose to bury it rather than face its implications. What if the Nephilim never died? What if the age of giants still lingers behind the thin fabric of our world, hidden in places untouched by the march of time? What if their ruins lie beneath our cities, their blood flows within human veins, and their watchful eyes observe us from unseen corners of the earth? The question is not asked loudly. It drifts like a soft current beneath the noise of modern life, a disturbance that unsettles the subconscious but leaves no trace in daylight thought. Yet, in the stillness of night, when minds drift toward sleep and the world grows quiet enough to hear its own breathing, the whisper returns. It begins in the oldest pages of human memory, scriptures whose authors lived closer to the age of wonders than we do today. It begins with a passage in Genesis, so brief, so easily overlooked that most readers skim over it without understanding the magnitude of what it implies. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward. 4 words, and also afterward, open a doorway into an ancient, forbidden history, a history that suggests the giants did not perish in the flood, nor fade into extinction, but endured, transformed, concealed. What became of them? Where did they go? And why, across every continent and every civilization, do stories of giants persist with striking consistency? Cultures separated by oceans describe beings of impossible scale, strength, and knowledge. From the Anakim of Canaan to the Jotun of Norse mythology, from the Titans of Greece to the red-haired giants of North America, from the towering gods of Sumer to the primordial beings of Polynesia, each memory echoes a shared truth, a truth humans buried to protect themselves. But truth is patient. It waits for silence. It waits for darkness. It waits for the moment when the mind relaxes enough to accept possibilities forbidden during the day. Tonight, we walk into that silence, into that darkness, into a world where ancient beings may not be gone, only hidden. We begin our descent before the flood, before kingdoms rose and crumbled, before humanity placed its trust in the illusion of its supremacy. We begin in a world where giants walked openly among humans, where forbidden knowledge flowed like rivers, and where humanity stood at the brink of transformation or annihilation. But the whisper lingers. What if the Nephilim did not simply vanish? What if they withdrew into the mountains, the ocean depths, or vast caverns beneath the earth? What if their blood endures in royal lineages? What if they guide human progress through unseen hands? The stones they lifted still stand. The myths they inspired still haunt. The genetic anomalies science cannot explain still surface in remote corners of the world. And the ruins, massive, impossible, ancient, still defy the capabilities of any known human civilization. This is not the story of a lost age. It is the story of an age that never ended, an age that learned to hide in plain sight. And as you drift deeper into this documentary's quiet rhythm, allow the shadows of forgotten epochs to rise again, not to frighten, but to reveal. For the giants have been waiting a long time to be remembered.
Genesis is a book of genealogies, laws, punishments, and miracles. Yet among its orderly structure lies a passage so out of place that many scholars wonder why it exists at all. In a narrative concerned with human morality, divine wrath, and the lineage of Noah, suddenly, without warning, appears a reference to beings neither human nor divine. The text does not explain them. It does not justify them. It simply states their existence, as though every ancient listener already knew the story in full. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of men. That is all the text offers, as if speaking their name too clearly might awaken something best left forgotten. The Hebrew word, Nephilim, carries an unsettling ambiguity. Some interpret it as the fallen ones, suggesting descent from heaven or from grace. Others propose it means those who make others fall, implying beings so powerful they subjugated humanity. But whatever the translation, the implication is clear. These were not ordinary men. They were not symbolic figures. They were not metaphors. They were physical beings who walked the earth, left behind structures, legends, bloodlines, and fear. The passage's brevity is suspicious. Scripture is rarely vague about important matters. Why would a writer compress the entire existence of a powerful hybrid species into 2 lines? Why does Genesis avoid describing their appearance in detail? Why does it omit their actions, their wars, their destruction, and their legacy? Unless the details were already so widely known among ancient people that elaboration was unnecessary or dangerous. The earliest Hebrew listeners lived in a world filled with stories of gods, demigods, and giants. Their neighbors, the Canaanites, Amorites, and Mesopotamians, believed the world was once ruled by colossal beings. The flood narratives of Mesopotamia describe not just human corruption, but divine human hybrids whose existence threatened the balance of creation. Genesis, attempting to assert monotheism in a polytheistic world, may have intentionally minimized references to the giants, but the truth bled through anyway. When the Israelite spies later entered Canaan, they reported seeing giants, descendants of the Nephilim. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes. This is an eyewitness account, not a mythological echo. The giants survived the flood. They rebuilt. They persisted. And the Israelites feared them. But why, and also afterward? If the flood was meant to cleanse the world of corruption, how did the Nephilim return? Did their blood pass through Noah's family? Did some giants survive by retreating into hidden places? Or did the Watchers descend again? The biblical text is silent, but the Book of Enoch is not. It fills the silence with an account too disturbing to remain in the canon. Enoch describes the Watchers, 200 beings of celestial origin, descending to Mount Hermon. They swore an oath to take human women and produce offspring. These offspring grew into giants so large and ravenous that they consumed not just food, but people. Their corrupted presence polluted the earth so profoundly that the flood became a cosmic necessity. Yet even Enoch hints that not all perished. Their spirits became the origin of demons. Their physical descendants, diluted by time, remained. Genesis, therefore, is not vague by accident. It is vague because the story it hints at is too vast, too ancient, too troubling. As you drift deeper into this chapter's quiet unraveling, imagine the world before the flood, a world where beings of towering height strode across valleys, where celestial knowledge mingled with human ambition, where the boundary between heaven and earth was thin enough for disaster to pass through. Genesis hides a story. Enoch whispers it. The ruins remember it. And somewhere, perhaps beneath the ice or behind the veil of time, something ancient remembers too. Long before the flood reshaped the world, long before human civilizations rose from riverbanks and deserts, there came a moment that altered the trajectory of existence itself. A moment when beings not of this earth crossed the boundary between realms and stepped on to the slopes of Mount Hermon. They were called the Watchers, sentinels, guardians, observers. But what they became was something entirely different. According to the Book of Enoch, 200 Watchers descended in unison, their arrival marked not by thunder or flame, but by a profound silence, the kind that precedes transformation. They were drawn not by conquest, but by desire. For the daughters of men were beautiful, and the Watchers, sworn to observe humanity, chose instead to intervene in its destiny. They made an oath, a pact binding them together so none could later claim innocence. Their leader, Semjaza, feared the consequences, knowing their act would provoke cosmic judgment. But once the oath was sealed, there was no turning back. Soon, the forbidden unions began. The Watchers taught humanity things no mortal was meant to know: warfare, enchantments, metalworking, astronomy, root-cutting, and the manipulation of nature itself. Knowledge that elevated, but also corrupted. Their children, the Nephilim, were giants of monstrous appetite, towering over humans, devouring harvests, livestock, and eventually the people themselves. Their presence destabilized creation, their strength grew uncontrollable, their knowledge threatened the order written into the foundation of the world. Violence spread like a stain, blood soaked the earth. Humanity cried out for deliverance, and in the heavens, judgment stirred. But not all Watchers were cruel. Some believed they were accelerating human evolution. Others saw themselves as teachers. Yet intention does not erase outcome. Their offspring, the Nephilim, became the embodiment of imbalance. Their very existence ruptured the boundary between divine and mortal, creating beings too powerful to coexist with humanity. The cries of the suffering reached the highest realms, and so came the decree. The world must be cleansed. The giants must fall. The Watchers must be imprisoned. The earth must be reset. But even as the skies prepared to open, even as the flood approached, something happened the texts barely mention. Some Nephilim fled. They retreated into mountains, caverns, and places where the waters would not reach. Others survived through their human mothers, and when the waters receded, fragments of their bloodline remained. The Watchers were bound beneath mountains, sealed in darkness, but their presence lingered in the knowledge they gave, in the ruins their children built, and in the whispered memories of early humanity. And so begins the long shadow they cast across human history, a shadow that may stretch into the present. The descent of the Watchers was not the beginning of a myth. It was the beginning of a story the world has spent thousands of years trying to forget.
The world before the flood was not a quiet world. It pulsed with energies humanity had not yet learned to understand, a world where the air shimmered with forces drawn from realms unseen. In those days, the earth was young enough to bend, soft enough to be shaped by power beyond mortal comprehension. And into this malleable world came the Nephilim, beings born from unions never meant to occur, children of heaven and earth who embodied imbalance from the moment they first drew breath. Their birth was not like the birth of human children. Their mothers carried them with difficulty, for the infants grew at unnatural rates, consuming strength, vitality, and life itself. Early testimonies, preserved in the fragments of forgotten texts, speak of women collapsing from exhaustion, of children emerging already the size of grown boys, of cries so loud they echoed through valleys and startled entire villages. These were not children. These were forces incarnate. The Nephilim grew quickly. Stories say that within months they reached the height of men, and within years they towered above trees. Their bones were dense, their muscles coiled with unnatural strength, their minds sharper, hungrier, and more curious than any humans. But their hunger was not merely intellectual. They devoured food at a rate no village could sustain. Herds vanished, fields were stripped bare, and the giants hungered still.
At first, humans saw them as wonders, living proof of divine contact, a sign that perhaps the boundary between heaven and earth had begun to soften. People approached them with awe, seeking blessings, teachings, protection. But the Nephilim were not gods. They were not angels. They were children of imbalance, beings born into bodies that demanded more than the earth could give. And as their appetites outpaced the natural world's ability to feed them, something dark awakened. The Book of Enoch describes them as ravenous beings who consumed all the acquisitions of men. And when the food was gone, they turned to humanity itself. Villages disappeared. Entire regions fell silent. Travelers spoke of enormous shapes moving through the night, shadowed forms bending to drink from rivers and leaving them nearly dry. The ground trembled beneath their steps, their voices carried for miles. Humans no longer sought their presence, they fled from it. But even flight was not enough. The giants were fast, far faster than their size would suggest, their strides covering distances humans could not hope to outrun. And when they fought each other, the battles shattered landscapes. Mountainsides fell, forests burned, rivers changed course, the earth itself groaned under their weight. The Watchers, who had once delighted in their offspring, now feared them. Their children had become disturbances in the order of creation, beings whose strength threatened not only humanity, but the balance that held the world together. But even this destruction was not the full measure of their corruption. For the Nephilim, inheriting both celestial intellect and mortal impulse, possessed a curiosity that drove them toward forbidden arts. They experimented with animals, altering them, merging species, creating monstrous hybrids remembered in myth as chimeras, manticores, and dragons. They learned enchantments, discovered the potency of roots and minerals, manipulated the elements, bent light and shadow. In many traditions, the first magicians were not humans at all, but giants. Civilizations were born under their shadow. Cities rose, fortified by stones so massive no human group could have moved them. Knowledge flourished, but it came at a cost. Because everything the Nephilim gave, they demanded payment for in ways the world could not sustain. As their dominion expanded, human suffering deepened, and the cry that rose from the earth reached the highest realms. The decision was made: the world must be cleansed, the giants must fall, the experiment must end. But as judgment approached, the Nephilim sensed the coming doom. Some became violent, lashing out at the heavens themselves. Others retreated into mountains, caves, deep forests, anywhere they believed the waters might not reach. And some, according to tales whispered in distant cultures, begged their mothers to save them, promising to return if they could survive the coming destruction. They would not be entirely wiped away. Their traces would endure, in bones, in blood, in ruins, in memory, and possibly in living form, hidden in places humans rarely go. The world was washed clean, but not erased. When the waters receded, humanity emerged renewed. But the Nephilim, they did not vanish completely. And the next chapter of their story begins with a discovery far more unsettling. The giants returned. When the floodwaters finally drained back into the oceans, the world that emerged was not the world that had existed before. Mountains had shifted, continents reshaped, and coastlines rewritten. Forests stood where seas once stretched, and plains lay barren where forests once thrived. The sky felt different, the air heavier, the world quieter, as though relieved but wary.
Yet the most profound change was not in the earth itself, but in its inhabitants. Humanity, reduced, humbled, renewed, stepped cautiously into a cleaner world, believing that all traces of the corruption had been washed away. But some traces remained. The most unnerving truth of the flood story is hidden in the smallest phrase, and also afterward. The Nephilim returned. How? This question has divided scholars, mystics, and theologians for centuries. Some propose that one of Noah's sons married a woman carrying the dormant bloodline of the Watchers. Others argue that some giants survived the flood by retreating to high mountains or vast subterranean caverns untouched by the waters. And still others insist that the Watchers, though imprisoned, retained the ability to influence the mortal world and reintroduce their genetic legacy. Whatever the method, the evidence is in the texts. The Israelites entering Canaan generations later encountered tribes described explicitly as descendants of the Nephilim, the Anakim, the Rephaim, the Zamzumim, giant clans whose presence was so overwhelming that the Israelite spies said, "We seemed like grasshoppers." These were not illusions, these were not metaphors, these were encounters with beings whose size, strength, and lineage traced back to the pre-flood world. King Og of Bashan slept in a bed nearly 14 feet long, an object recorded not as myth, but as historical detail. The Rephaim were feared not only for their physical stature, but for their association with the realm of the dead, their very name implying shades, spirits, echoes of a world that should have ended. Yet they lived, they warred, they ruled, and humans struggled under their shadow once again. Beyond the Middle East, similar stories took root. The Greeks spoke of titans who survived their great war and retreated underground into Tartarus. Norse mythology described the Jotun, enormous beings older than the gods themselves, who continued to influence the world from distant realms. In the Americas, tribes told stories of red-haired giants who terrorized their ancestors. In Polynesia, the Menehune and other massive beings shaped the landscape. Across Africa, Asia, Europe, and the Middle East, the story is the same. Giants survived. But their survival came with change. They were fewer in number. Their size diminished over generations. Their abilities weakened, and their hybrid nature became less visible, buried beneath human features yet still present in bloodlines, manifesting occasionally in individuals with unusual height, strength, intellect, or even anatomical anomalies. This dilution was not accidental. Nature itself sought balance. But diluted does not mean erased. Some bloodlines preserved their ancestry intentionally. Royal families claimed descent from gods. Dynasties emphasized purity of blood. The Egyptian pharaohs pursued incestuous unions, believing their blood carried divine essence. The Sumerian kings listed reigns of impossible length, hinting at inherited longevity. In medieval Europe, the Merovingian dynasty claimed descent from a mysterious sea creature lineage. Over and over, the same pattern emerges. The powerful preserved something ancient, something non-human within their bloodlines, and the ordinary people retained only whispers. As humanity repopulated the earth, the descendants of the giants withdrew from the centers of civilization. They hid in the mountains. They vanished into forests. They slipped into caves. They retreated beneath the oceans. The world was no longer theirs, but neither were they gone. Legends say some awaited a time when humanity would forget them, when fear would fade, when myths would become bedtime stories, when belief would become superstition. And then they would return. But before they returned openly, they left reminders across the earth,
monuments so massive and ancient that even today humanity struggles to explain them. Which leads to the next chapter. If giants lived after the flood, then the structures they left behind are not myths. They are evidence.
Myths are rarely invented from nothing. They are memories wrapped in symbolism, history softened by time. And when nearly every culture on Earth remembers giants, the pattern cannot be coincidence. It is evidence, echoing across continents. In Greece, the Titans were primordial giants who ruled before the Olympian gods. Their size, strength, and defiance led to a cosmic war that reshaped creation. Even after their defeat, they were not destroyed, only imprisoned, a striking parallel to the Watchers. The Gigantes, born from the blood of Uranus, were beings of immense power who battled the gods and were eventually buried beneath mountains. Again, beings older than man, defeated but not extinct. In Norse mythology, the Jotun were not mere enemies of the gods, they were their ancestors. Odin himself descended from giants. The gods intermarried with them. Every major figure in Norse cosmology carries giant blood. And yet, the giants were always depicted as older, deeper, more primordial, connected to the earth in ways the gods were not. In the Celtic world, the Fomorians were a race of monstrous giants who arrived in Ireland long before humans and waged war against the early settlers. Some were described as grotesque hybrids, one-eyed, one-armed, or one-legged, suggesting mutations or genetic anomalies. Native American tribes preserve some of the most detailed accounts. The Paiute people tell of the Siteka, red-haired cannibalistic giants who lived in Nevada. According to the tribe, they were hunted and eventually cornered in a cave, which was set aflame. Excavations at Lovelock Cave uncovered unusually large skeletal remains and red-haired mummified fragments. Scholars argue over interpretations, but the legends persist. In Central America, the Maya and Aztecs spoke of a race of giants who lived before the current age. These beings built massive structures and angered the gods, who destroyed them. South American tribes describe giants who walked the Andes, leaving behind stonework so precise and enormous that modern builders still cannot replicate it. In Polynesia, the Menehune are described as small, powerful beings, but early versions of the myth depict them as much larger, capable of moving stones impossible for humans. In Africa, the Zulu people speak of the people of the sky, tall beings who descended and interbred with humans. Across Oceania, Melanesian myths describe the first men, who were giants and shaped the land. In the Middle East, Islamic traditions speak of the people of Ad, a tribe of enormous stature destroyed by divine wrath. Jewish texts describe Og, the last of the Rephaim. Christian Apocrypha mentions giants roaming the earth after the flood. And in ancient Mesopotamia, the Apkallu, semi-divine sages, resembled the Watchers themselves. All these stories come from cultures that never contacted each other. Yet the pattern is unmistakable. A race of giants existed before recorded history. They were powerful. They shaped early civilization. They warred with gods or humans. They were diminished or destroyed. And some survived. Myth, then, is not fantasy. It is memory, faded, reshaped, metaphorical, but anchored in truth. If all the world remembers giants, then the question is not whether they existed, but where they went. Hidden in mountains, beneath oceans, in caverns beneath Antarctica, or, more unsettlingly, among us. The next chapter reveals their ruins,
structures so massive that no human civilization, ancient or modern, can fully explain them, because some architecture was not built by human hands at all. Across the world stand monuments so colossal, so impossibly precise, that they seem to mock the limitations of human history. They sit like silent witnesses to a forgotten era, a time when beings of extraordinary power walked the earth. To modern scholars, these structures are mysteries. To ancient people, they were reminders. To the giants, they may have been simple architecture. The first of these enigmas rises at Baalbek in Lebanon, a windswept plateau crowned by stones so enormous that even today's most powerful cranes would struggle to move them. The trilithon, 3 stones forming the base of a massive platform, each weigh over 800 to 1,000 tons. Their edges are so perfectly squared that they appear machine-cut. The stones sit with such precision that a blade cannot slide between them. No ancient culture possessed the technology to lift, transport, or position them. Yet they sit there, silent, immovable, ancient. Some believe the Romans built Baalbek, but this is impossible. The Romans constructed atop an older foundation. The structure beneath predates them by thousands of years. Local legend insists it was built by giants. The same pattern repeats across continents. In the Andean highlands of Peru lies a site that confounds engineers even today, Sacsayhuaman. Giant interlocking stones, some weighing over 200 tons, fit together like puzzle pieces with no mortar. Their surfaces are curved to match each adjoining stone with a precision so unnatural it appears organic, as though the stones were softened and molded into place. No hammer, chisel, or primitive tool could achieve such perfection. The Inca themselves said they did not build it, that it was the work of an older race. Tiwanaku, near Lake Titicaca, features monolithic blocks carved with such precision that modern machinists cannot replicate their angles. The Gateway of the Sun stands as a single megalith carved with astronomical codes far beyond the understanding of the culture that later occupied the site. At Pumapunku, stones weighing over 100 tons lie scattered as though thrown by a catastrophic force. Their surfaces are cut with perfect right angles and machine-like grooves, but the civilization associated with them lacked metal tools, a forgotten technology, or the remnants of a race not bound by human limitations. Across the ocean, the Moai of Easter Island stand as sentinels, their immense heads carved from volcanic stone. Their bodies, buried deep underground, reveal full torsos unseen by early explorers. Their expressions are solemn, almost mournful, as though remembering an age that ended in tragedy. Polynesian lore claims they were moved by mana, spiritual power, or perhaps by being strong enough to lift them with ease. In Egypt, the Great Pyramid rises from the desert floor, its original casing stones polished to reflect sunlight like a beacon. Its alignment with cardinal directions is so perfect that even modern surveyors cannot improve upon it. The structure incorporates advanced mathematical ratios, astronomical alignments, and architectural accuracy unparalleled by any ancient culture. Even more mysterious are the massive blocks within its core, some weighing 80 tons, transported from quarries hundreds of miles away. Egyptologists claim thousands of laborers hauled them with ropes, but this explanation collapses under scrutiny. The pyramid is not a tomb. It is something far older, something inherited, something built during an age when giants ruled or guided humanity. Göbekli Tepe, buried beneath Turkish soil for millennia, predates agriculture, cities, and writing. Carved pillars weighing up to 20 tons stand in circles, forming the world's earliest known ceremonial complex. Yet hunter-gatherers supposedly built it.
But nomadic tribes do not create megastructures. They do not quarry and carve enormous T-shaped stones. They do not create advanced astronomical alignments, unless they were instructed, or unless they had help. In North America, the remnants of giant burial mounds stretch across the Mississippi Valley. Early settlers reported enormous skeletons unearthed from these mounds, some measuring nearly 10 feet tall. The Smithsonian received many of these remains, though none are displayed today. Across Ireland and Britain, dolmens and megalithic tombs feature stones weighing more than 100 tons placed atop upright supports with mathematical precision. How did Stonehenge's builders transport blue stones 150 miles with no wheels? Who engineered its astronomical alignment? Who understood eclipses and solstices with such accuracy? If giants walked the earth, if Nephilim or their descendants shaped early civilizations, these structures make sense. They are too advanced for primitive societies, too massive for human-only labor, too aligned with celestial mechanics to be coincidence. These monuments are not random. They form a pattern, an ancient signature of a global intelligence. A civilization erased, yet leaving behind architecture as its final echo. And if the giants built these structures, then their presence was not isolated, it was global. Which raises the next question: did their bodies survive? Do the remains of these beings still exist? And what do the skulls reveal about beings who once towered over mankind?
Among the ruins of ancient civilizations lie remnants not just of structures, but of beings. Bones, skulls, remains that do not fit human anatomy. Some of the most compelling evidence appears in the Paracas region of Peru, where elongated skulls, distorted far beyond what cradleboarding can produce, reveal cranial volumes up to 25% larger than typical humans. These skulls have only one parietal plate instead of two, a biological impossibility for Homo sapiens. DNA testing reveals sequences that do not match known human ancestry. These beings were not human. They were not deformed. They were a separate lineage, perhaps a surviving branch of the Nephilim. Across the world, royals sought to imitate elongated heads through binding, suggesting they were mimicking an elite class with a distinct cranial structure. Egyptian pharaoh Akhenaten is depicted with elongated skull features, sloping cranium, narrow jaw, extended neck. His daughters share the same traits. Ancient art does not exaggerate deformities, it encodes reality. The royal families of Egypt, Sumer, and the Indus Valley all depicted elongated heads and unusual physical proportions. Why? Because their bloodlines were believed to be divine, descended from the gods, the Watchers, or hybrid beings. In Malta, skulls discovered in the hypogeum show elongated craniums with unusual joint structures. Some skulls have extensions at the back resembling a second layer of bone. These traits do not exist in humans. In Romania, giant skeletons were uncovered in the 1970s. Some measured over 12 feet tall. Villagers reported that military trucks arrived, removed the bones, and sealed the dig site. In the Caucasus Mountains, archaeologists found bones of individuals estimated to be over 15 feet tall. The skeletons vanished from public record soon after. In North America, the Smithsonian allegedly received dozens of giant skeletons in the 19th and 20th centuries, many from burial mounds across the Midwest. Reports in local newspapers describe massive skulls, double rows of teeth, and femurs far larger than human proportions allow. Yet none of these remains are publicly displayed. Official explanations dismiss them as exaggerations, yet the consistency of the reports is impossible to ignore. Across Asia, Buddhist texts reference Rakshasas, giant beings with immense strength. In India,
The Vimanas describe ancient beings of extraordinary size and power. In Japan, tales of Oni, red or blue giants, persist through centuries. But the most unsettling evidence lies not in bones or legends, but in living people. Modern humans with extraordinary height carry genetic mutations that seem to appear spontaneously. Some individuals possess bone densities far beyond normal levels, others unusual skull shapes, others extraordinary strength. Science labels these anomalies benign, but what if they are remnants, faint echoes of ancient genetics resurfacing? Bloodlines preserved through royal intermarriage, genetic traits passed down quietly, a diluted heritage of something not entirely human. And if their DNA persists, then their knowledge might as well. Which leads to the next chapter, the forbidden sciences of the Watchers, knowledge that propelled early civilizations forward and may still shape humanity today.
The story of human advancement is puzzling. For hundreds of thousands of years, humanity lived in small tribes, crafted simple tools, and survived through instinct and labor. Then suddenly, abruptly, civilization erupted. Agriculture appeared almost simultaneously across continents. Astronomy became sophisticated. Metallurgy, mathematics, architecture, writing, all emerged rapidly, as though knowledge had been given rather than discovered. Ancient cultures openly admitted this. The Sumerians said their knowledge came from divine beings called the Anunnaki. The Egyptians credited Thoth. The Greeks spoke of Prometheus. The Hindus told of gods descending from the sky to teach humanity the arts of civilization. Everywhere, the story is the same. Knowledge was gifted. But by whom? The Book of Enoch reveals the source: the Watchers. These celestial beings taught humanity secrets that accelerated development but destabilized the natural order. Azazel introduced metallurgy and weapons. Semhaza taught enchantments and spells. Rakiel instructed humans in earth sciences. Shamshiel revealed the signs of the sun. Barakel taught astrology. Penemu taught writing. Kazdeha taught abortion. Knowledge that empowered, but corrupted. Knowledge humanity was not mature enough to wield responsibly. This forbidden instruction created an imbalance that spread throughout the world. Cities rose quickly, tribes transformed into kingdoms, wars became more violent, structures grew more complex, and spiritual practices darkened. Even after the Watchers were imprisoned, their knowledge remained, encoded in traditions, rituals, secret societies. Mystery schools emerged, guardians of the old teachings. The Chaldeans preserved astral sciences. The Egyptians guarded sacred geometry and alchemy. The Greeks inherited esoteric mathematics. The Hebrews encoded cosmic mechanics in the Kabbalah. Islamic scholars explored hidden sciences beneath the veil of the Golden Age. Medieval alchemists claimed ancient origin for their art. Freemasonry, Rosicrucianism, and later secret orders all pointed back to a primordial teacher. And in every tradition there is mention of those who descended, the shining ones, the Watchers, the teachers of old. But the most disturbing aspect of this forbidden knowledge is this: it mirrors the modern world. Genetic engineering, AI, astrophysics, nuclear technology, quantum manipulation, tools capable of altering reality itself. What if humanity is repeating the same cycle? What if we are rediscovering what the Watchers once taught? What if their influence persists, subtle, guiding, hidden? And what if their children, the Nephilim, still watch from the shadows, waiting for the world to reach a state they once knew? As you drift deeper into this unfolding mystery, remember this:
Everything we call progress may not be new. It may be a return, a reawakening, a resurrection of forbidden knowledge once thought lost. And knowledge is never neutral. It shapes destinies, it opens doors, and sometimes it awakens ancient things that were meant to sleep.
Throughout history, humans have been drawn to secret knowledge, mysteries that whisper of origins older than recorded memory. Hidden within the texts of Gnosticism, Kabbalah, Sufi mysticism, and the arcane practices of alchemy lies a pattern that hints at truths humanity may not be ready to confront. In these esoteric systems, symbols and teachings often refer to celestial beings, fallen watchers, or ancient progenitors who taught forbidden knowledge to humanity. The Templars, whose vast libraries were said to contain scrolls from before the flood, and the Freemasons, with their intricate rituals and encoded wisdom, may have preserved fragments of what the ancients called the Watchers and their hybrid descendants, the Nephilim. Scholars long dismissed these links as coincidence or metaphor, yet the repetition of motifs across cultures and epochs is uncanny. Stories from Sumer speak of the Anunnaki, beings who descended from the heavens and imparted knowledge of agriculture, metallurgy, and writing. In Kabbalistic texts, the notion of a hidden lineage of mighty beings is encoded in the Tree of Life, and mystics hint at interactions with entities that exceed human understanding. Alchemists wrote of transforming not only matter, but consciousness, of unlocking latent abilities that could elevate humans beyond the ordinary. Could these teachings be remnants of Nephilim influence disguised in symbolic form? The idea gains traction when considering the global spread of similar mystical symbols. The hexagram, the serpent, the winged sun disk appear across continents in cultures that could never have interacted. These are not merely decorative. They are warnings, instructions, and memories encoded in human consciousness. Secret societies may have acted as custodians, preserving knowledge too dangerous to release. Records speak of rituals designed to maintain harmony between humans and forces beyond comprehension, hinting at a time when the Nephilim walked among men, teaching, guiding, or perhaps manipulating the fledgling human race. Could it be that the Watcher's knowledge survived in fragments, whispered through ritual, encoded in art, and encrypted in language so that only those prepared could decode it? As the modern world rediscovers ancient sites, deciphers forgotten languages, and excavates sealed chambers, it is possible that these hidden societies were not merely eccentric orders, they were guardians. And now, with seals weakening, symbols awakening, and the earth itself stirring, the knowledge they preserved may become vital once more. Perhaps humanity stands at the threshold, ready to encounter not only the relics of the Nephilim, but the very lessons the ancients tried to protect. Were these secret societies guiding humanity gently, or were they safeguarding something far more dangerous, waiting until the world could face the truth of giants once more? The thought is chilling, for the signs are everywhere. Ancient codices, hidden inscriptions, and strange recurring symbols suggest that the legacy of the Nephilim has never been lost. It has only been waiting for the right time, for the right people, for the moment when the Watcher's children might awaken alongside the human race once more.
The story of human DNA is far more intricate than many realize. With every advancement in genetics, the blueprint of humanity reveals traces of beings long thought extinct. Modern humans carry fragments of Neanderthal and Denisovum DNA, sequences that provide clues to past interbreeding, adaptation, and survival. Yet beyond these known hominins, researchers have identified anomalies, unexplained sequences that do not match any recognized human or extinct lineage. Rare mutations passed down through generations suggest the possibility that ancient hybrid genetics may persist within us. Could it be that some humans today carry traces of Nephilim DNA, remnants of a time when giants walked the earth? Certain traits, extraordinary height, remarkable strength, unusual longevity, rapid healing, or heightened cognitive abilities may not be purely coincidental. Across the globe, myths describe lineages of exceptional humans, some capable of feats beyond ordinary comprehension. Anthropologists have long noted these stories, but often dismissed them as folklore. However, when combined with genetic anomalies, a startling picture emerges. The possibility of a dormant lineage encoded in human chromosomes waiting for environmental or cosmic triggers to awaken. Population clusters in isolated regions often display unusual physical or cognitive traits that baffle scientists. Could these be modern echoes of Nephilim genes? Evidence is subtle but persistent. Studies of extreme height in certain mountain populations, rare cases of advanced healing abilities, and even psychological resilience beyond normal parameters all align with descriptions of the giants from ancient texts. Moreover, modern humans occasionally report memories or visions that cannot be explained by conventional science. Dreams of immense beings, unfamiliar landscapes, or ancient wars. Could these experiences be genetic memories, a residue of the Nephilim consciousness embedded within our DNA? The implications are staggering. If Nephilim DNA persists, it may influence humanity in ways we do not yet understand, shaping evolution silently and invisibly. Could humanity be carrying the seeds of its own transformation, inheriting not only the strengths, but perhaps the instincts, ambitions, and dangers of giants? Some geneticists speculate that such sequences might be activated by environmental stress, cosmic events, or human intention. What happens if these dormant genes awaken simultaneously across populations? The result could be extraordinary individuals with capabilities far surpassing what modern society can explain. And yet, there is a chilling possibility. These traits might not be merely gifts. They could be a calling, an echo of the Nephilim intent, waiting for the world to become aware of the hidden forces within. As technology and genetics advance, the lines between ordinary human and ancient hybrid blur, leaving us to wonder, are we truly Homo sapiens alone, or have we carried the legacy of giants in silence, as they once shaped our world from the shadows?
Legends of enormous beings surviving in remote, inaccessible places have persisted across civilizations. From the towering forests of North America to the Himalayas, the Andes, and the uncharted depths of the oceans, stories speak of enormous figures, hidden, observing, sometimes intervening. Could these be remnants of the Nephilim? Folklore often describes them as guardian-like, occasionally benevolent, other times ferocious. Mountain tribes recount encounters with beings whose height dwarfs that of ordinary humans, whose voices carry for miles, and whose eyes seem to reflect millennia of knowledge. Deep in the Amazon, there are whispers of colossal humanoids glimpsed from river canopies, moving silently through the jungle, vanishing before investigation. In the frozen expanses of Siberia and Canada, explorers occasionally report footprints impossible to belong to modern humans. Measurements often exceed 3 meters, and the impressions suggest a stride unmatched by ordinary anatomy. Modern technology has caught glimpses of unusual phenomena. Thermal cameras detect massive shapes moving in forests where no human or large animal should exist. Sonar scans in remote lakes register immense underwater forms that evade capture. And drones photographing mountain valleys capture fleeting shadows of enormous beings that vanish instantly. Some claim these giants live in subterranean realms, vast cave systems stretching far beyond mapped distances. Geological formations hint at enormous chambers, perfectly carved, impossible for ordinary humans to construct without extraordinary tools or strength. Could these be refuges for Nephilim avoiding humanity's expansion? Oceans, too, hold mysteries. Reports from fishermen and deep-sea submersibles describe titanic, humanoid shapes observed near abyssal trenches. Though dismissed as optical illusions or misidentified marine life, the consistency and specificity of these accounts across cultures is remarkable. Some even speak of encounters with beings emerging temporarily to study or interact with humans before vanishing again. Scholars and cryptozoologists argue that such myths must have a kernel of truth. Perhaps these giants survived in isolation, far from human civilization, evolving or maintaining abilities beyond ordinary human limits. Could they be observing humanity, measuring progress, or waiting for the right conditions to re-emerge? The implications are both awe-inspiring and terrifying. If Nephilim exist today, hidden in remote corners of the planet, their presence challenges everything we understand about history, biology, and human evolution. They are living echoes of a past deliberately obscured, waiting silently, perhaps aware that their moment to walk openly among humanity may be approaching. The question arises not only of their existence, but of intent. Will they return as protectors, teachers, conquerors, or predators? The planet may hold these hidden giants in its folds, watching, waiting, their consciousness intertwined with ours, a legacy that refuses to die. And if they are awakening now in response to the disturbances in ancient sites, genetic stirrings, or cosmic shifts, humanity may be on the threshold of encounters that could redefine what it means to be human, and what it means to be a world shared with beings that once walked openly, shaping civilizations, commanding respect, and leaving behind a memory that refuses to fade.
The year 1947 marked an inflection point in human history, an era where the veil between the known and the mysterious seemed to thin. UFO sightings, first widely reported in Roswell, New Mexico, sent shockwaves across governments, scientists, and ordinary citizens. The world began to notice that something ancient, powerful, and inexplicable was surfacing. At the same time, archaeologists were unearthing the Dead Sea Scrolls, ancient texts that contained cryptic writings about watchers, angels, and hybrid beings, referencing events and knowledge long thought lost to time. The coincidence of these discoveries was not lost on those who understood that history rarely aligns randomly. Operation High Jump, the massive U.S. military expedition to Antarctica, remains shrouded in secrecy. Officially a scientific mission, countless testimonies and declassified documents hint at something more, a search for ancient bases, technology, or perhaps entities that had survived in isolation beneath the ice for millennia. Meanwhile, intelligence agencies around the globe began cataloging anomalies, unexplained aerial phenomena, unusual energy readings, and even human behavior patterns that could not be explained scientifically. Some theorists argue these events are not isolated. They are signals of awakening, the stirring of knowledge and power that humanity has long ignored or forgotten. Could it be that the Nephilim or their descendants are influencing the course of modern technology? Perhaps the sudden surge in UFO sightings, rapid advances in physics, and unprecedented leaps in engineering hint at knowledge passed down or left behind by beings with understanding far beyond our own. Ancient texts describe devices that manipulate energy, control the elements, and even bend perception, concepts only recently surfacing in quantum physics, AI, and experimental propulsion systems. The question lingers: is humanity stumbling upon knowledge that once belonged to the giants? The overlap of these phenomena creates an unsettling pattern. Cosmic alignments, secret explorations, recovered artifacts, and sudden technological leaps all suggest that humanity is interacting with a force older and deeper than previously imagined. What if the UFOs are not extraterrestrial in the conventional sense, but remnants or creations of the Nephilim returning to guide or test humanity once more? Could they be observers, caretakers, or heralds of a reawakening? The patterns cannot be ignored. Intelligence agencies have long studied ancient ruins, searching for signs that technology or knowledge survived the cataclysms of the past. Ancient maps, carvings, and symbols appear to align with modern discoveries: polar regions, underwater structures, remote mountains and deserts, locations where strange phenomena have been reported consistently across decades. All of this suggests that a global awakening is underway, subtle yet unmistakable. Technology, UFO phenomena, and the rediscovery of forbidden knowledge may all be converging at a moment when humanity is most vulnerable and most capable of understanding. If the Nephilim were capable of shaping civilizations before the flood, could their influence now accelerate our technological evolution? The thought is both exhilarating and terrifying, for it implies that humanity is not alone in guiding its future, and the forces at play may be more conscious, intelligent, and patient than we can imagine. The awakening has begun, and those attuned to the signs can perceive the threads connecting ancient power, modern technology, and the shadowed presence of giants watching from beyond our comprehension.
Humanity stands on the precipice of transformation. Genetic engineering, AI, consciousness-altering technologies, and transhumanism mirror concepts once considered forbidden knowledge, tools that the Watchers might have shared with their Nephilim progeny. We are now capable of editing genomes, creating hybrids, and enhancing human capabilities, echoing the very transgressions that birthed giants in ancient times. In laboratories around the world, scientists manipulate DNA with a precision that would have seemed godlike to civilizations thousands of years ago. The implications are profound. If the genetic anomalies we discussed earlier are remnants of Nephilim lineage, modern technology might inadvertently awaken dormant traits. The same curiosity and ambition that drove humanity to build empires, cities, and civilizations now propels us to recreate abilities that once belonged to the giants. AI, in particular, acts as a mirror of consciousness, a digital extension of human intent, capable of learning, adapting, and even simulating forms of perception beyond human limits. Could these creations be considered modern watchers, observing humanity and guiding or testing us in subtle ways? Consciousness technologies, neural interfaces, brain-computer integration, and collective consciousness experiments edge closer to realms the ancients hinted were forbidden. Ancient texts describe humans accessing knowledge through altered perception, rituals, or communion with celestial beings. Today,
Science approaches these thresholds systematically, decoding the mind and attempting to replicate extraordinary cognitive capacities. The ethical and philosophical implications are staggering. Are we merely experimenting with tools? Or are we unknowingly reawakening the same forces that led to the rise of the Nephilim? Some scholars argue that humanity is repeating history, creating hybrid intelligence not unlike the fusion of divine and human traits described in ancient lore. Others warn that the path is fraught with danger, that tampering with our genetic, technological, or cognitive evolution could unleash forces beyond our control. Yet the allure is undeniable. Enhanced abilities, longevity, strength, and intelligence tempt humanity with the promise of evolution, the very gifts the Nephilim might have wielded. Could this be the culmination of a cycle, an echo of ancient ambitions, or a prelude to a new era in which humanity itself becomes hybridized, awakened, or transformed? The evidence grows. Secret experiments, unexplained breakthroughs, and sudden surges in anomalous abilities suggest that something stirs within human populations. Rare genetic awakenings, spontaneous cognitive leaps, and extraordinary physical feats hint at the activation of latent traits long dormant. The question remains, are these mere coincidences, or are we observing the subtle hand of an ancient intelligence nudging evolution forward? Humanity's current trajectory mirrors the stories of old. As our technological and biological capabilities expand, the possibility of encountering, or even becoming, the descendants of Nephilim looms closer. Every genome edited, every neural interface integrated, every AI consciousness developed edges us toward the unknown. And the shadows of the giants, long hidden, may be watching, guiding, or awaiting the moment when the new hybrid age will emerge. The transformation is not only imminent, it is inevitable. And the choices humanity makes now will determine whether we repeat the mistakes of the past or ascend with caution, wisdom, and awareness.
The final chapter confronts the ultimate question. Did the Nephilim truly vanish, or did they simply learn to hide? Across myths, legends, and increasingly credible sightings, evidence suggests that their presence is not entirely absent. Hybrid bloodlines may quietly permeate human populations, ancient sites may be awakening, and technological leaps may align with the knowledge they once possessed. Global consciousness shifts, manifested in sudden spiritual awakenings, psychic phenomena, or collective dreams of giants, hint that humanity may be attuning to forces far older than civilization itself. Could these awakenings be signals, invitations, or warnings? Ancient structures, from megalithic temples to hidden underground chambers, align with celestial events that occur once in millennia. These alignments coincide with reports of anomalous energy, strange lights, and unusual behavior in flora and fauna near these sites. Some scholars and researchers suggest that the Nephilim, or their descendants, are preparing for a re-emergence, waiting for the right moment when the planet and its inhabitants are ready. Could hybrid descendants be among us already, influencing events subtly, guiding humanity along unseen paths? The possibility is chilling, yet mesmerizing. Entities of extraordinary power, intelligence, and longevity, hidden in plain sight, watching, waiting, perhaps even interacting without our knowledge. The return may not be a dramatic emergence, but a slow awakening, a gradual blending of old knowledge with new consciousness, bridging the past and present in ways humanity cannot yet perceive. Technology, genetics, and consciousness expansion may act as catalysts, stirring latent potential within the human race and aligning it with the wisdom or power once wielded by the Nephilim. The implications are profound. If these beings truly return, the world could experience transformations on multiple levels: physical, mental, spiritual, and societal. But with awakening comes danger. The ancient texts are clear that power without understanding is destructive. Humanity may find itself facing decisions and phenomena that echo the chaos of the ancient world, when giants walked freely and their influence reshaped civilizations. The thought is both humbling and unsettling. Could the giants have learned to adapt, hide, and influence events quietly, awaiting the right conditions to walk openly once more? Or is the return a natural cycle, inevitable as history itself, a reemergence of a line of beings whose existence challenges every assumption about human origins, evolution, and destiny? As the listener drifts into sleep, the contemplation lingers. The Nephilim may have never truly disappeared. Perhaps they have simply learned patience, waiting for the moment when humanity is ready to confront the legacy of giants, the knowledge of the Watchers, and the hidden potential embedded in our own DNA. The night is silent, the stars shimmer, and somewhere, in the hidden corners of the earth or in the depths of human consciousness, the old ones are stirring. And when they awaken, will humanity be ready to meet them? Or will the world once again tremble beneath the shadows of beings that never truly died? The answer may lie not in history books or science alone, but in the subtle whispers of the past, echoing through our genes, our dreams, and the mysteries of the planet itself, urging us to remember, to awaken, and to prepare for the return of the old ones.
Imagine a world where giants once walked among us, beings of unimaginable strength, towering over ordinary humans, their knowledge and power shaping civilizations long before recorded history. These are the Nephilim, creatures whispered about in ancient texts, shrouded in mystery and fear. Now, imagine if they never truly vanished. What if, instead, they retreated into the shadows, waiting, watching, and quietly influencing the course of humanity? Could their legacy still be hidden in our DNA, in the myths and legends that persist across cultures, or even in secret societies and forbidden knowledge long kept from the public eye? This documentary takes you on a journey beyond the boundaries of conventional history and into the realm of the extraordinary. From the cryptic writings of Gnostic and Kabbalistic texts to the strange encounters of modern explorers in remote mountains, forests, and oceans, we explore the possibility that the Nephilim may have survived in secret, hidden from civilization, yet never truly gone. We dive into genetic anomalies in modern humans, ancient technologies, UFO phenomena, and the awakening of old powers that could hint at a world where the giants' influence endures. Could the sudden leaps in technology, AI, and genetic engineering be echoes of knowledge the Nephilim once wielded? Are we unknowingly retracing the steps of the ancient world, stepping closer to a hidden truth that humanity is only beginning to understand? As you drift into sleep, this documentary will guide you through shadows of history and myth, unraveling mysteries that have been buried for millennia. With every story,
every legend, every unexplained phenomenon, we ask, what if the era of the Nephilim never truly ended? Prepare to explore the hidden corners of our past, the secret threads woven into human evolution, and the tantalizing possibility that giants are not a relic of legend, but a presence quietly shaping our world. Tonight, let your mind wander into the unknown, into the realms where history, myth, and mystery collide, and ask yourself, could the giants still be among us, waiting for the right moment to emerge once more?